Have you ever looked someone in the eyes and felt, deep down, that something was wrong, but you couldn't explain why? Like a chill in your gut, a quiet whisper in your mind saying, "This person isn't who they pretend to be." Most people ignore that voice. They explain it away, blame themselves, and keep walking straight into the fire. But that inner voice, it's not fear, it's not paranoia, it's your intuition, and it's begging you to pay attention. In a world that tells you to be kind, patient, forgiving, and open-hearted, nobody teaches you what to do when you meet someone who uses those very values against you. Someone who doesn't want connection, they want control. Someone who smiles as they harm you, who twists your words, your emotions, even your reality, until you no longer recognize yourself. That's not conflict. That's not a bad relationship. That's evil. And yes, it exists. Evil doesn't always come crashing in loud and obvious. Sometimes it whispers. It flatters. It blends in so perfectly that by the time you realize what's happening, the damage is already done. It can be a partner, a parent, a boss, or a so-called friend. And if you've ever felt drained, manipulated, blamed, and confused, but kept going back because you thought maybe it's just me, then this message is for you. You see, the most dangerous people aren't the ones who scream in your face. They're the ones who slowly, methodically erase you, piece by piece, smile by smile, lie by lie. And the worst part? They make you believe it's your fault, that you're the problem, that you're too sensitive, too emotional, too needy. But the truth is, you're not too anything. You were just targeted by someone who saw your light and wanted to snuff it out. This isn't just about naming evil, it's about reclaiming your power. Because once you see it, once you really understand the signs, you can never be fooled the same way again. You start setting boundaries, you start protecting your peace, you start walking away, not because you're weak, but because you finally realize your worth. And if you stay with me through this, you're going to learn how to see through the masks. You'll discover the traits that evil people hide behind, the tactics they use to control and confuse, and more importantly, you'll know what to do about it. You'll stop second-guessing your instincts. You'll stop shrinking to fit someone else's comfort. You'll rise. Because you were never meant to live in fear. You were never meant to walk on eggshells. You were meant to stand tall, speak boldly, and protect the fire inside of you. This isn't just a warning. It's a wake-up call, a call to trust yourself again, to stop surviving and start living, with clarity, courage, and strength. So don't look away. What you learn next could change everything. Evil doesn't always wear a scowl. Sometimes, it greets you with the warmest smile you've ever seen. It compliments you, listens closely, and makes you feel like the most important person in the room. It's disarming, almost magical at first. But behind that charm is something colder, calculated, and deeply manipulative. It's not real connection, it's a performance. And the moment you begin to trust, the mask slips just enough to trap you deeper. People often confuse charm with goodness, but charm is a skill, a tool that can be used to connect or to control. An evil person uses charm like bait. They study you, find your emotional wounds, your hopes, your insecurities, and then mirror what you need most, not out of love, not out of care, but to gain leverage, to pull you into their orbit where they begin to shape your reality. You start feeling dependent on their approval. You crave their validation. You excuse their red flags because you remember how kind they were at the beginning. But that kindness was a strategy. When someone uses charm as a weapon, you'll notice something strange. They always know the right thing to say, but their actions don't match their words. They tell you you're special, but they constantly test your limits. They say they support you, but you feel smaller every time you're with them. And still, you hesitate to pull away, because you're hooked on a version of them that never truly existed. Your mind begins to wrestle with itself. You remember their compliments, their gifts, their intense attention. And yet, you feel confused, uneasy, like you're walking a tightrope. That's not love. That's psychological warfare. It's designed to cloud your instincts and keep you off balance. And the more confused you feel, the more control they gain. But here's the truth. You don't owe anyone the benefit of the doubt when your peace is being stolen. You don't have to justify your discomfort. If someone's presence drains you, controls you, or leaves you questioning your own worth, that's all the clarity you need. You are not paranoid. You are not too emotional. You are seeing what they've spent their lives trying to hide. Real connection doesn't come with confusion. Real love doesn't make you doubt yourself. Real people don't need to charm their way into your life. They show up consistently, honestly, and with respect. And you deserve nothing less. So the next time someone's charm feels too perfect, too fast, too intense, pause. Observe. Listen not just to what they say, but how they make you feel over time. Because your feelings are not weaknesses. They are signals, they are warnings. And when you stop ignoring them, you stop giving power to people who never had your best interests at heart. This is how you take your power back, by trusting your gut, not the illusion, by seeing through the mask and walking away before it breaks you. There is one trait that separates someone who occasionally makes mistakes from someone truly dangerous: empathy, or more accurately, the complete absence of it. You can't fake empathy for long. You can pretend to care, you can say the right words, but when pressure hits, when the mask slips, the truth always shows. A person without empathy doesn't just hurt others. They feel nothing when they do. No guilt, no remorse, no inner conflict. Just silence where a soul should speak. When you're dealing with someone who lacks empathy, you will always feel alone in your pain. You'll cry, and they'll stare. You'll explain, and they'll mock. You'll break, and they'll stand still. You'll wonder how they can watch you suffer and do absolutely nothing. And then you'll start to blame yourself. You'll think maybe you're expecting too much, maybe you're being dramatic. But the truth is, you're standing in front of someone who does not feel. Not the way you do. You feel everything. That's your gift. You care deeply. You think before you act. You reflect on your mistakes and try to make things right. But someone without empathy sees that as weakness. They exploit it. They know you'll forgive. They know you'll stay. And they use your heart like a weapon against you. Empathy is the foundation of human connection. It's what stops us from harming others. It's what creates guilt, apology, growth. So when it's missing, the rules change. You're not in a relationship. You're in a one-sided game where only one person feels the damage, and the other, they just keep playing. It's hard to accept, because it means facing something most people don't want to believe. Not everyone has a conscience. Not everyone wants peace. Some people thrive in chaos. Some people cause harm with precision, and feel powerful doing it. You weren't too much. You weren't too sensitive. You were simply trying to find love in someone who couldn't feel it. But here's the breakthrough. Once you understand this truth, you stop begging for change. You stop hoping they'll suddenly care. You stop watering a desert and expecting flowers to grow. And that shift, that inner clarity, is where your power begins. Because you're not broken. You were just surrounded by someone who couldn't feel your worth, no matter how brightly you shined. Your empathy is not your enemy. It's your superpower. But only when you stop giving it to those who use it to destroy you. Save it for people who honor it, who see you, who feel you. The right ones won't make you suffer to feel significant. They won't silence your pain. They'll hold space for it. This is your wake-up call. Stop explaining your heart to people who don't have one. Stop shrinking to be understood by someone who refuses to listen. And most of all, stop waiting for empathy from someone who never had it to give. Let that truth set you free. When someone lacks empathy, they don't just ignore your pain. They drain your spirit. Slowly, quietly, strategically. Not through one dramatic moment, but through 1,000 tiny cuts you don't notice until you're bleeding emotionally. Evil doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it whispers in patterns. It wears you down so subtly that you forget what peace even feels like. And by the time you realize how tired you are, how numb you've become, the damage is already deep. They feed off your confusion, your guilt, your exhaustion. Every conversation turns into a trap. Every disagreement becomes your fault. You begin to feel like nothing you say is ever right. You walk into rooms with them already on edge, bracing for something, anything, to go wrong. And when it does, they act as if it was all you're doing, as if your reactions are the problem, not their constant need to provoke them. This is not miscommunication. This is emotional warfare. You weren't always like this. You used to feel strong, confident, clear, but being around them feels like carrying invisible weight every day. You lose focus. You second-guess yourself. You stop trusting your own voice. That's not love. That's control. And that energy drain is not just exhausting, it's deliberate. Because if they can keep you tired, they can keep you compliant. And if they can keep you questioning yourself, they never have to take responsibility. Some people need chaos to feel alive. So they create storms and blame you for the rain. They push your buttons just to see you react, then call you crazy for doing so. It's a cycle designed to keep you off balance. When you try to step back, they reel you in. When you stand up for yourself, they punish you. This isn't just unhealthy, it's destructive. And you are not meant to live like this. You deserve to be around people who refill your energy, not steal it. You deserve to feel calm, safe, and strong in your own skin. If someone constantly makes you feel drained, anxious, and unsure of who you are, that is not your fault. That is your signal. Your body speaks when your mind is too confused to understand. That tension, that fatigue, that constant stress, it's not in your head. It's real. And it matters. You are allowed to choose peace. You are allowed to walk away from people who leave you empty. You don't need permission to protect your energy. You don't need approval to reclaim your strength. The most dangerous kind of evil is the kind that makes you forget how powerful you are. But now, you remember. Now, you see it. And with that awareness comes a choice. Stay stuck in their storm, or step into your own light. Let their chaos drown you, or let it push you to rise. You're not here to be drained. You're here to live, to breathe, to thrive. And starting now, you take that life back. Fully, fiercely, without apology. There's a kind of pain that doesn't come from what someone did. It comes from how they twisted it. You try to explain how they hurt you, and somehow, by the end of the conversation, you're the one apologizing. You question your memory, your feelings, your reality. They rewrite the truth so convincingly that you begin to doubt your own mind. This is not a misunderstanding. This is psychological manipulation. And it's one of the clearest signs that you're in the presence of something deeply toxic, even evil. They don't just lie, they distort. They bend reality like a weapon. They tell you things didn't happen, or that they happened differently, or that they only happened because of you. You get trapped in a mental loop, constantly replaying moments, trying to figure out what's real and what's not. That confusion? It's not random. It's not weakness. It's a symptom of being gaslit, and it's exactly what they want. Gaslighting isn't just a tactic, it's a form of control. When you no longer trust your own memory, your own judgment, your own emotions, they become your only source of truth. And once they control your perception, they control everything. Your choices, your reactions, your identity. You stop standing up for yourself. You stop speaking your truth. You start shrinking, apologizing, pleasing, just to keep the peace that never lasts. It doesn't start with big lies. It starts with small ones, subtle corrections, minor denials. But over time, the pattern grows. The message becomes clear. Your version of reality is always wrong, and theirs is always right, even when you know what you saw, even when you know what you heard. They convince you to erase your own truth and replace it with theirs. That's not love. That's mind control. But here's the most powerful truth. If someone can make you doubt yourself, they can keep you from leaving. They can make you question whether it was really that bad, whether you're overreacting, whether you deserve better. And the longer you stay in that fog, the harder it becomes to breathe. But you can break that cycle. You can reclaim your mind. You can trust yourself again. Your memories are valid. Your feelings are real. Your experiences matter. You do not owe anyone the benefit of the doubt when they constantly deny your truth. You are not too sensitive. You are not confused. You are being manipulated, and your awareness is your first weapon. Because once you recognize the game, you stop playing it. You don't need anyone to confirm your reality. You are allowed to stand in your truth, even when no one else sees it, especially then. You were never meant to live under someone else's version of the world. You were meant to see clearly, speak honestly, and live freely. The moment you decide to trust yourself again is the moment everything begins to change. Your mind is your power. Guard it, own it, believe it, and never let anyone twist it again. When someone wants complete control over you, they don't just twist the truth, they twist your world. And one of the most powerful ways they do it is through isolation. Not always physically, but emotionally, mentally, socially. They don't rip your support system away in one clean break. They do it quietly, gradually, with carefully chosen words and subtle doubts. They don't say, don't talk to them. They say, are you sure they really care about you? They don't forbid your friendships. They poison them, one seed of suspicion at a time. Isolation isn't always about being alone. It's about feeling disconnected from anyone who reminds you of your strength, anyone who could help you see the truth, so they make sure you feel guilty for reaching out. They create tension between you and those who love you. They tell you your family doesn't understand, that your friends are jealous, that you're better off without outside influence. And soon, without realizing it, you stop calling, you stop sharing, you stop asking for help, not because you don't need it, but because you've been convinced it's not safe to receive it. And once you're isolated, they have you. Now you're dependent. Now they control the narrative. You have no one to check in with, no mirror to reflect what's actually happening. Just their voice, their version, their manipulation. And if you try to leave, they'll remind you how alone you are, how no one else will understand, how no one else wants you. But none of that is true. It's just fear, carefully placed and consistently reinforced, designed to keep you small, silent, and stuck. But you are not as alone as you feel. That feeling of isolation isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a result of their strategy. It's not that no one cares. It's that someone wanted you to believe that. And now, it's time to break that lie. Because no matter how far they've pulled you away, connection is still possible. Healing is still possible. Rebuilding trust is still possible. You can find your way back to yourself, and to the people who always loved you, even if you were too lost to see it. You are not meant to walk through life disconnected. You are not meant to carry the weight alone. Real love doesn't isolate. It supports, it encourages. It helps you grow closer to others, not further away. Anyone who cuts you off from those who uplift you is not protecting you. They are protecting their control over you. And you don't need to stay quiet anymore. You don't need to keep shrinking in a world that was never meant to be lived in silence. Your voice still matters. Your story still matters. The people who truly love you, they are still there, waiting, ready to remind you of who you are. Reach, speak, reconnect. You've been in the dark long enough. It's time to come back to the light, stronger, wiser, unshakable. Some people don't just tolerate your pain, they enjoy it, not in obvious ways, not with outright cruelty, but in quiet, disturbing patterns that reveal something far more sinister than indifference. They smile when you're hurting. They stay calm while you're breaking. They seem energized when you're weak. It's not just the absence of care, it's the presence of satisfaction. And that changes everything. This is when you stop wondering if they're just emotionally unavailable. This is when you realize they're emotionally dangerous. There are people who find power in watching you fall apart, not because they want to help you rebuild, but because your pain makes them feel superior. They provoke you just to watch the reaction. They say things they know will sting, then sit back and enjoy the fallout. And afterward they pretend it meant nothing, but you know better. You felt it. The precision, the timing, the coldness in their eyes. This isn't normal conflict. This isn't misunderstanding. This is sadism, disguised as sarcasm, cloaked in apathy, hidden behind a casual laugh. But underneath it all is one clear truth. They feed off your suffering. They use it as fuel. Because to them, your pain isn't a sign to stop. It's a sign they're in control. That kind of person doesn't just want attention, they want dominance. And what better way to feel powerful than to reduce someone else? They don't need to raise their voice. They just need to lower your spirit. They don't need to leave bruises. They just need to create enough confusion and self-doubt that you bruise yourself. And when you finally reach your breaking point, they act shocked. As if you were unstable. As if you overreacted. As if they were the victim all along. It's a game. A sick, manipulative game. And the only way to win is to stop playing. Stop explaining yourself to people who enjoy watching you struggle. Stop opening up to someone who weaponizes your vulnerability. Stop hoping that one day they'll finally care. Because the truth is, if someone enjoys your pain, they will never feel your love. And they will never deserve it. Your emotions are sacred. Your heart is not a battlefield. You were not put here to be someone else's source of entertainment. You were meant to be seen, supported, understood, not torn down and laughed at, not blamed for bleeding when someone else kept cutting. The moment you stop denying what you already know is the moment you start taking your power back. You don't need their approval. You don't need their apology. You need your own clarity. You need your own strength, and it's already inside you, waiting to rise. You've been through enough. You've seen through the mask. Now it's time to protect your peace like your life depends on it, because it does. You are not here to be broken. You are here to become unbreakable. And that journey starts with knowing exactly who you're walking away from. When someone shows you who they are, believe them, not in their promises, not in their apologies, but in their patterns. And one of the clearest patterns of an evil person is this: they never take responsibility, ever. No matter what damage they cause, no matter how obvious their actions are, they will twist, deny, and deflect until the truth is buried under a mountain of excuses. To them, accountability is a threat. It exposes their weakness, and so they avoid it at all costs. They could lie, cheat, betray, destroy, and still find a way to make it your fault. They're late because you didn't remind them. They exploded in anger because you pushed their buttons. They lied because you wouldn't have handled the truth. There is always a reason, and it's never theirs. They rewrite reality so convincingly that you start apologizing for things you never did, defending yourself against accusations that make no sense, and carrying guilt that doesn't belong to you. That's the trap. Evil people weaponize your conscience. They see your willingness to reflect, to grow, to apologize, and they use it against you. They know you'll question yourself. They know you'll take responsibility, so they make sure you always feel like the problem. It's not just manipulation, it's psychological imprisonment. The more you try to make peace, the more they hand you the blame. But here's the truth that sets you free. Real strength is in owning your actions. Real character is shown through accountability. And when someone refuses to face what they've done, when they dodge, blame, or reverse the roles, it's not because they're strong. It's because they're scared. Scared of being seen, scared of being exposed, scared of the truth. You are not crazy for expecting someone to admit when they're wrong. You are not asking for too much. You are asking for the bare minimum of decency. And if someone constantly fails to meet that standard, it's not a reflection of your expectations. It's a reflection of their emptiness. No healing happens without truth. No progress comes without responsibility. And no relationship of any kind can survive when one person is always the villain and the other is always the victim. The only way forward is honesty. And if someone refuses to be honest with themselves, they will never be honest with you. You don't need to carry someone else's guilt just because they refuse to hold it. You don't need to keep peace that only exists when you're silent. You don't need to shrink to make room for someone else's ego. Let them run from the truth, but don't chase after them. Let them deny, but don't let them define you. Your freedom begins the moment you stop accepting blame that was never yours. Stand in your truth, own your part, and no more. Let them drown in their excuses. You're not here to rescue them. You're here to rise above them, with clarity, with strength, with unshakable truth. Control is not always loud. Sometimes it wears a quiet face. It doesn't always come in the form of rules or threats. Sometimes it's disguised as concern, wrapped in guilt, or hidden beneath silence. Evil people don't need to shout to dominate. They control you through subtle pressure, constant unpredictability, and emotional manipulation that makes you doubt your every move. Their power isn't in what they say. It's in how they make you feel small, wrong, and dependent. You begin to notice patterns. You avoid saying certain things because you don't want to trigger another explosion. You stop expressing your needs because they'll only be dismissed or mocked. You tiptoe around their moods like your life depends on it. You shrink yourself to avoid setting off the next storm. That's not compromise, that's captivity. And that's exactly what they want. Control is their currency. They use it to feed their fragile ego, to create the illusion of power, to remind you who's in charge. But they don't want control over situations. They want control over you, your words, your reactions, your identity. They condition you to silence yourself. They make you question your instincts. They create chaos and then blame you for trying to clean it up. Over time. You stop recognizing who you are without their voice in your head. That voice becomes your filter. You second-guess your thoughts. You hold back your truth. You live in a constant state of hesitation, waiting for their approval, avoiding their disapproval, living in a cycle of emotional survival. This is not love. This is not respect. This is a slow erosion of your freedom, and the longer you stay, the more normal it feels. But here's the truth you've been searching for. Control is not care. If someone truly loves you, they don't need to own you. They don't need to mute your voice to feel safe in theirs. Real connection creates space, not suffocation. It encourages growth, not obedience. It celebrates your individuality instead of crushing it. You were not born to be controlled. You were born to live freely, speak boldly, and move with confidence in your own direction. Your thoughts are your own. Your choices are valid. Your boundaries matter. And anyone who tries to erase those things is not protecting you. They are imprisoning you. Freedom begins with one decision: to stop giving someone the power to make you feel less than you are. Take your identity back. Take your choices back. Take your life back. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your obedience. You owe yourself your truth. The most dangerous chains are the ones you can't see, but the strongest freedom starts with seeing them clearly. And once you do, you no longer ask for permission to be yourself. You become yourself, fully, unapologetically. And no one can control what they can no longer confuse. When you're around someone who slowly poisons your mind, you start to feel like you're always wrong. Even when you're right. Even when your gut is screaming. Even when the facts are crystal clear. That constant doubt isn't an accident. It's not your weakness. It's the result of being consistently undermined by someone who needs you to question yourself in order to keep their power intact. They don't want truth, they want control. And the fastest way to gain it is to make you lose faith in your own voice. It starts small, a comment here, a dismissal there, a look that makes you feel foolish for speaking up. Over time, the message becomes louder than words. You are always the problem. You're too emotional. You're too dramatic. You're too much. So you start to shrink. You begin editing yourself. You walk into rooms already apologizing. You feel guilt for things that were never wrong. You start to exist as a version of yourself that feels more like survival than self-expression. That feeling of always being wrong doesn't come from the truth. It comes from the repetition of emotional erosion. They chip away at your confidence, not with blunt force, but with precision. Every time you share your perspective, they flip it. Every time you set a boundary, they push past it. Every time you try to stand up, they pull you down, not with reason, but with shame. And shame, when absorbed long enough, makes you believe that your voice doesn't matter. But here's the breakthrough. You were never wrong for speaking up. You were never wrong for feeling deeply. You were never wrong for wanting clarity, honesty, and respect. You were in the presence of someone who couldn't handle your truth, so they made you doubt it. They couldn't dominate your strength, so they made you question it. What you're feeling is not weakness, it's awakening. Awakening to the truth that love should never make you feel small. That connection should never cost you your self-respect. That relationships should never require you to doubt your worth to keep the peace. You are not too much. You were just placed in front of someone who is too little to hold what you are. The most powerful decision you will ever make is to stop letting someone else define your reality. You don't need to be louder. You just need to believe yourself again. You don't need to prove your worth. You just need to stop handing it to people who refuse to see it. Every time you silence yourself to protect someone else's comfort, you abandon the very strength that makes you whole. But not anymore. Now you remember. Now you rise. Because you were never meant to question your voice. You were meant to trust it, own it, speak it, and walk in it, fully, freely, and without fear. This is not your breaking. This is your return. Confusion is not a side effect. It's the plan. When someone wants to control you, they don't need to overpower you. They just need to keep you uncertain. They blur the lines between right and wrong, love and pain, truth and deception, until you stop trusting yourself altogether. You begin to rely on them for clarity, for reassurance, for direction. And in doing so, you hand over your power piece by piece, without even realizing it. This is how control becomes invisible. It doesn't come with a warning sign. It comes wrapped in subtle fear, masked by guilt, and buried under obligation. You stay because you feel responsible. You stay because you don't want to be the one who gave up. You stay because you've been trained to believe that their chaos is somehow your fault. And that belief, repeated often enough, becomes a cage. The cycle is brutal. Fear keeps you quiet. Obligation keeps you stuck. Guilt keeps you small. These emotions aren't yours. They were planted, engineered to keep you in a loop. When you try to pull away, they remind you of everything they've done for you. When you raise your voice, they play the victim. When you try to leave, they make you feel like a monster. And so you freeze, trapped in a fog of confusion where nothing feels certain except the ache in your chest. But confusion is not a sign to stay. It's a signal to pause, to look deeper, to ask yourself why clarity disappears every time they enter the room. Healthy relationships bring peace. They bring openness, safety, and consistency. Not perfection, but honesty. When someone truly cares, they don't leave you drowning in doubt. They don't twist your emotions into weapons. They don't need you lost to feel found. You are allowed to want clarity. You are allowed to expect respect. You are allowed to walk away from anyone who thrives in your confusion. Because the truth is, you were never the problem. You were the target. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong in ways they couldn't manipulate. And the moment you see that, everything changes. You don't need to have all the answers to take your first step. You just need one truth. You deserve to feel safe in your own mind. You deserve relationships where communication isn't a battlefield. You deserve peace that doesn't come with a price. Let that truth burn through the fog. Let it guide you back to yourself. This is where your power begins. Not when you fix them, but when you free yourself. Not when they admit their games, but when you stop playing. You are not lost. You are waking up. And the more you trust that quiet voice inside, the louder your clarity becomes. What they tried to erase, you will now reclaim. Piece by piece, word by word, step by step, until confusion is no longer your prison, but your reason to rise. Not everything that breaks you looks violent. Some things destroy you slowly, through silence, through absence, through the refusal to acknowledge your existence unless it serves a purpose. This is how evil hides in plain sight, not by being loud but by being cold, emotionally cold, spiritually vacant. They don't explode, they withhold. And the impact of that emptiness can hollow a soul deeper than any scream ever could. Emotional coldness is not just a personality trait, it's a weapon. It's a way to communicate dominance without saying a word. It makes you question whether you're even worth warmth, whether you're worthy of affection, whether you're deserving of love that shows up, that sees you, that speaks your name with care instead of calculation. And when you don't receive that, your mind starts rewriting reality. You think, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe I should just be grateful they haven't left. But silence in the face of your pain is not love. Indifference toward your joy is not connection. The refusal to celebrate you, support you, or even acknowledge your emotional world. That is not strength. That is control masked as detachment. It keeps you reaching for approval that never comes. It keeps you hoping that if you just try harder, you'll finally earn their attention. But you won't. Not because you're not enough, but because they've already decided your value comes from your obedience, not your presence. You are not meant to beg for warmth. You are not meant to shrink for comfort. You are not supposed to feel invisible in relationships that claim to care. Real connection feels like sunlight, not ice. It softens you, expands you, and reminds you that being seen should never feel like a privilege earned through suffering. The emotionally cold person doesn't just ignore you, they train you to ignore yourself, to silence your needs, to dim your emotions, to disconnect from your own intuition just to keep the peace. But peace bought with your silence is not peace at all. It's a prison, one where your smile becomes a mask, your strength becomes exhaustion, and your identity slowly fades into the shadows of someone else's power. But you don't belong in the shadows. You were born to take up space, to speak, to feel, to express, to receive love that is whole, warm, and without conditions. You are not asking for too much. You are remembering what real connection is supposed to feel like. And that memory is your map back to freedom. The coldness they offer is not your fault. It is their refusal, their limitation, their fear. But you don't have to carry it. You don't have to internalize it. You get to choose light. You get to walk toward warmth. You get to open yourself to relationships that meet you with fire, not frost. You don't have to chase what won't hold you. You just have to stop settling for less than what your soul was built to receive. Control does not always wear chains. Sometimes it wears charm. The most dangerous form of control is the one that convinces you it's protection. It speaks in soft tones but steals your choices. It offers security but demands your freedom. It pretends to care, but it's only ever about power. When someone wants to dominate you, they won't always shout. They'll whisper. They'll make suggestions that sound like concern but feel like pressure. They'll ask questions that aren't really questions. They're commands dressed in manipulation, and it happens slowly. First, they criticize the way you speak, then the way you dress, the people you trust, the things you love. They don't tear everything down all at once. They chip away. Little by little, you stop expressing yourself. You stop dreaming out loud. You stop making decisions without second-guessing them. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped being your own authority. You started outsourcing your worth to someone who only thrives when you shrink. This is not love. This is not care. This is control. And it is one of the clearest signs that you're dealing with someone who doesn't want a relationship. They want a throne. They want obedience, agreement, total emotional surrender. Not so they can love you better, but so they can feel bigger. In their world, love is not a mutual exchange. It's a tool, a way to dominate, to influence, to mold you into a version that serves them, not you. But your life is not a puppet show. You were not born to play a role in someone else's script. You were born to write your own. You were born with a voice, with instincts, with desires that matter. And any relationship that forces you to mute them in the name of peace is not a relationship. It's a cage. When you start recognizing control for what it is, you begin to wake up. You start to see how often you were made to feel guilty for thinking independently. You start to notice how your confidence was chipped away by someone who feared your power. And you start to feel something stirred deep inside, a quiet rebellion, a rising clarity, a sacred reminder that you are not here to be ruled. You are here to be free. Freedom begins with truth. And the truth is, no one has the right to silence your soul. No one gets to dictate who you become. You do not need permission to exist fully. You do not need approval to grow. The most radical act you can take in the face of control is to reclaim your autonomy, your ability to choose, to walk away, to trust your inner voice above all else. You are not difficult for wanting independence. You are not selfish for wanting space. You are not wrong for wanting to breathe. You are finally waking up to the truth. Control disguised as love is not love. It's fear. And your courage to break free is the beginning of everything. Guilt is one of the sharpest weapons evil people use. It's not loud or obvious. It slips in through small cracks, through backhanded compliments, disappointed looks, or carefully chosen silence. Guilt makes you question your worth, even when you've done nothing wrong. It rewrites reality in a way that makes their pain your fault, their anger your responsibility, their unhappiness your burden to carry. It convinces you that you owe them something, even when they've taken everything. The most dangerous part is how easily guilt disguises itself as morality. You start to think you're being unkind when you set boundaries. You feel selfish when you say no. You believe you're the problem, because they've trained you to measure your goodness by how much you bend, how much you break, how much of yourself you're willing to give away. But guilt is not always the voice of conscience. Sometimes, it's the voice of control. An evil person doesn't need to hurt you with force. They hurt you with feeling. They know your empathy is a doorway. They know your need for peace, love, and connection can be twisted into chains, and so they play the role of the victim. They act wounded when you stand your ground. They remind you of everything they've done for you. They paint themselves as misunderstood, as fragile, as someone who only ever wanted to help. But behind the mask is a cold calculation. If they can make you feel bad for choosing yourself, they can keep you trapped. Guilt binds the strongest souls when it's been weaponized over time, and it's not easy to recognize, because when you care deeply, you don't want to hurt people. You don't want to let anyone down. You don't want to be the reason someone else suffers. But ask yourself this: why does your happiness make them suffer? Why does your growth threaten them? Why does your light cause them to dim? Real love doesn't punish you for being whole. It doesn't twist your kindness into obligation. It doesn't demand that you carry more than your share, shrink so others can feel tall, or stay silent so someone else feels powerful. When you start to feel guilty for healing, for moving forward, for setting yourself free, that's not your guilt. That's someone else's manipulation disguised as morality. Freedom comes the moment you stop apologizing for your existence. The moment you realize that protecting your peace is not cruelty, that saying no is not betrayal, that choosing your own well-being is not abandonment, it's alignment, it's truth. It's the first step back to yourself. You are not here to carry the weight of someone else's ego. You are not responsible for the emotions they refuse to manage. You are not cruel for finally choosing yourself. Guilt only controls you when you believe it belongs to you, but it never did. Let it go, reclaim your clarity, and step into a life where your heart is no longer a tool for your own imprisonment, but a compass pointing you toward your freedom. Cruelty doesn't always come dressed in rage or violence. Sometimes it wears a smile. It hides behind politeness, charm, and even kindness. But beneath the surface there is poison, slow, deliberate, and precise. Evil people don't always scream. They whisper. And what they whisper is designed to dismantle you from the inside out. They make you doubt your instincts. They chip away at your confidence. They mock your dreams subtly so you stop reaching for them. It's not about breaking your bones. It's about breaking your spirit. They know exactly where your insecurities live, and they visit often, not with concern but with strategy. They'll compliment you just enough to keep you from leaving, but criticize you just enough to keep you from rising. You're never quite good enough, never quite smart enough, never quite anything enough. And the moment you get close to recognizing your worth, they pull you back with cutting words disguised as jokes, with silence that screams, with comparisons meant to shrink you. This kind of cruelty is hard to name, which makes it harder to fight, because you tell yourself they're not that bad, that maybe you're overreacting, that they didn't mean it. And over time you stop trusting your own pain. You dismiss your own red flags. You normalize discomfort because it feels safer than facing the truth, that someone you've cared about is chipping away at your soul, not by accident but by design. Evil people aren't interested in your healing. Your strength threatens their control. Your joy is a mirror reflecting everything they refuse to be. So they attack not with fists, but with manipulation, mockery, and neglect. They withdraw affection as punishment. They give attention as a reward. They play with your emotions like it's a game, and your confusion is their victory. But there comes a moment when you see it for what it is. When the fog lifts, and you finally recognize that love should never hurt like this, that you were never meant to beg for kindness or earn the right to feel safe, that you are not difficult, you are discerning, you are not fragile, you are fierce, and you are not too much. You are simply too awake to pretend anymore. The power they thought they held dies the moment you reclaim your mind, the moment you believe your truth over their manipulation, the moment you stop waiting for their approval and start honoring your boundaries. You don't need their validation to be whole. You don't need their permission to walk away. You only need your own courage. You are not here to be diminished. You are not here to be managed. You are here to be free, to rise, to breathe fully without fear. Their cruelty has no place in the life you are building, so let it go. Stand tall. Choose peace over pleasing. Choose healing over hoping they'll change. Choose your life over their control. Because the moment you do, you become untouchable, and that's the freedom they never wanted you to find. Some people don't seek connection, they seek control. They're not interested in understanding you. They're only interested in bending you, and they do it in ways that are so subtle, so calculated, you barely notice it happening. It starts small, a dismissive look, a sarcastic remark, a choice made for you without asking. And slowly, your voice gets quieter. Not because you've lost your mind, but because you've been trained to question it. You begin to ask for permission to be yourself. You shrink your thoughts to keep the peace. You lower your light so they don't feel small. But what you don't realize at first is that you're sacrificing yourself on the altar of their ego, and they will take everything you offer without blinking. This is how evil works, not always with chaos, but with quiet domination. It doesn't need to yell. It just needs to make you forget you were ever strong, to make you believe their world is the only safe one, even if it hurts. They don't want love, they want obedience. And if they have to crush your confidence to get it, they will, because to them your strength is a threat. Your independence is an insult. Your authenticity is a rebellion they refuse to tolerate. But here's the truth, your spirit wasn't built to be caged. You weren't born to walk on eggshells. You weren't designed to keep your dreams small just to make someone else comfortable. You're here to live boldly, to speak with clarity, to choose yourself, especially when someone else wants to erase you. You owe no one your silence. You owe no one your submission. You owe only yourself the honesty of living a life that reflects your true worth. They may try to convince you that you're difficult, that your standards are too high, that your boundaries are unfair, but this isn't about being too much. It's about being just enough for the life you truly deserve. They may call it selfish, but it's not selfish to reclaim your peace. It's survival. It's sanity. It's the beginning of everything good that's been waiting on the other side of fear. You are allowed to walk away from anyone who makes you feel like a burden. You are allowed to protect your energy from those who exploit it. You are allowed to rebuild yourself without asking for permission. Let them call you cold. Let them call you stubborn. Let them call you what they need to in order to sleep at night. Because you know the truth. You know what it took to rise from the fog. You know the strength it took to choose yourself after being taught you weren't enough. And now, you are becoming what they never expected. Free, not angry, not bitter. Just free, calm, clear, and ready to live without apology. Because no matter how deeply someone tries to bury your light, the fire inside you was never theirs to extinguish. It is yours, and it is rising. Freedom begins the moment you stop asking for permission to exist as you are. The moment you realize that you were never meant to be understood by everyone, never meant to fit into every room, never meant to please every expectation. You were meant to honor what's real inside you, even when others can't see it. You were meant to speak truth, even when your voice shakes. You were meant to walk your path, even when it terrifies you. Because nothing kills the human spirit faster than betraying yourself to gain approval from people who wouldn't notice if you disappeared.